When I was 30, I married Emily, a high school classmate of mine. Emily was known as a beauty in our class, often referred to as the belle of the class. But she wasn't stuck up. Her friendly nature made her popular with both the guys and the girls. Her father was a CEO of a large company, running a real estate. Emily was, so-called, the heiress of fortune. As for me, I'm just an average Joe, a regular office worker. I didn't come from a wealthy family, nor was I particularly brilliant in studies. Marrying Emily felt like a real miracle. We reunited at a class reunion when we were 25 and hit it off over a popular anime we both liked. Back in high school, Emily and I both loved anime and would often discuss the protagonists and their adventures. Gradually, we started seeing each other outside school and eventually started dating. While we were dating, we never fought, and for a while after getting married, we enjoyed a harmonious life together. Then a year into our marriage, Emily gave birth to our son, Kyle. Kyle's eyes would droop when he laughed, just like mine, and his cute mouth resembled Emily's. She dove into parenting bugs, determined to do her best as a first-time mom. Our troubles began when Kyle was about to start kindergarten. Kyle should go to a private school. I want him to have a great education, Emily suggested. But we can afford that on my salary. But she smiled and replied, "Don't worry about the money. My dad will cover Kyle's expenses." Honestly, her words hurt me a lot. Although she might have said it casually, I felt like a subtle dig at my lack of earnings. Eventually, Kyle did go to a private kindergarten, thanks to my father-in-law's money. And it didn't stop there. He went on to private elementary and middle school. Emily also enrolled him in tutoring and language classes. With his time consumed by studies and extracurriculars, Kyle started to look a bit stressed when he became a 6th grader. One day, Kyle said to me, "Dad, Mom wants me to be like Grandpa, a CEO, but I want to do other things. I'd rather go to a general public high school rather than a prestigious private school." He said that, letting his true feelings spill out. Hearing that made me feel like a failure as a father. Eventually, I decided to talk to Emily about Kyle's future. I confronted her with Kyle's true feelings, hoping to persuade her. "Hey, about his future path, he's saying he wants to go to a public high school." She replied, "What? No way, that's not acceptable. Educational background is becoming more and more important. Besides, we have the money, thanks to my dad, so we can afford to give him the best. Plus, who knows if the person Kyle marries will be wealthy." Her words deeply hurt me. I argued, "That's no way to talk. He might have his own path in mind. Let's at least listen to him." But she was adamant. "I know what's best for him. Just go along with it." What's that all about? Our argument led to an icy relationship, and we ended up divorcing before Kyle started 9th grade. Emily fought hard for custody, but Kyle chose to stay with me. "I won't see Mom anymore. I want to live freely," he declared. Emily was shocked to hear that she was disliked by her son and returned to her parents' home. After that, Kyle and I started living together. I fulfilled Kyle's wish and sent him to a public high school. I hadn't seen Emily since our divorce. Being new to the life of just 2 guys, I was honestly overwhelmed and had no spare time or emotional bandwidth. Sometimes, I wondered if she might have met someone nice and remarried. On the other hand, I hadn't met any significant woman since then, just focusing on earning enough for Kyle's education and our living expenses. We couldn't afford luxuries, but Kyle never complained. After high school, Kyle went to an automotive technical school and moved out to study and work simultaneously. My son earned money through part-time jobs to cover every expense other than his tuition. He probably didn't want to burden me. Later, he earned a certification while still in school and got a job through a school referral. With Kyle standing on his own, my financial burden eased. But I felt a sense of emptiness. I was living a bland, ordinary life alone. One day, I was assigned to a 2-week business trip to a rural town a bit far from here. Though I feared getting lost in an unfamiliar place, I managed to find the way to the hotel. The company had booked a long-stay hotel for me, and before checking in, I decided to buy some food at a nearby supermarket. As I was heading to the deli section, I couldn't believe my eyes. What is that? A woman who looked just like Emily crossed in front of me. She was wearing some kind of work clothes. I quickly followed her but lost sight of her. Where is she or Emily? I kept wandering around the supermarket. Shoot, where could she have gone? Ouch, I slightly sprained my foot. I snapped back to reality, questioning what I was even doing. What was I planning to do if I met her again? I couldn't understand why I had tried to follow a woman who resembled my ex-wife. I didn't want to confront her with any resentment, or maybe deep down, I was still holding on to feelings for her after 5 years. I couldn't find an answer. I just wanted to see her again. That much was certain. The next day, after finishing my work, I walked around the area where I had lost sight of her. The supermarket was bustling, especially busy with a sale that day. I couldn't find anyone resembling her. It was a long shot, looking for someone based on such brief information. Maybe she was someone else. And even if I did find her by chance, what then? Just as I was thinking of giving up and heading back, I spotted a woman in the same uniform as the one I saw yesterday. In a hurry, I followed her, making sure not to lose sight of her this time. I wondered what I would do if it turned out to be someone else and couldn't bring myself to call out to her right away. I was also unsure about what to say. Eventually, the woman came out of a door near the restroom, carrying a bucket and mop. I was certain when I saw her face, it was Emily. I hesitated for a while, watching her, but then made up my mind and approached her. "Excuse me, are you Emily?" She saw me, gasped, and her face turned pale. "Tom, is that you?" Her voice trembled as she spoke. The stunned woman standing before me was nothing like the Emily I used to know. With minimal makeup, a gaunt face, and hair not as neatly kept as before. She still had traces of her past beauty, but her cheeks were hollow, showing signs of wear. She said, somewhat embarrassed, "It's been a while. I never expected to meet you here. I didn't want you to see me like this." "I'm actually here on a business trip." I was surprised too. I replied. I just wanted to have a proper conversation with her again. I took out a notebook from my bag, scribbled down the name of the hotel where I was staying and my cell number, and handed it to her. I went back to the hotel and waited for a call. I didn't expect her to contact me so soon, but she did, around 7 p.m. I'm near the hotel right now," she informed. I felt her tension in her voice. We decided to go into a pub next to the hotel. Wanting a private conversation, I requested a private room. After the drinks and food were served, Emily abruptly began speaking. "I'm sorry for what happened back then," she said, with tears in her eyes. She looked up from her downturned face and forced a strained smile at me. While feeling a sense of nostalgia in her expression, my heart felt heavy. Then, I heard about Emily's life after our divorce. I went back to my parents' house after the divorce, but I left after a huge fight with my dad. Suddenly, he started pushing a marriage arrangement on me that I didn't want. "How will you survive without me? You've always depended on someone else. You can't live alone. You should remarry soon." That's what he told her. It seemed that these words from her father wounded her pride. She then declared, "I'm an adult. I can live on my own. I won't rely on Dad anymore," and left her home. But reality was not so easy. Despite being a graduate of a prestigious university, Emily had no work experience, and no company would hire her, so she started working part-time as a supermarket cleaner. Also, having grown up in a wealthy family, her sense of money was different from ordinary people. In spite of her low income, she overspent and ended up living a difficult life, barely making ends meet. "I couldn't do anything on my own, just like my father said," she said with a bitter smile. With alcohol easing the tension, we were able to talk freely. She seemed to be worried about Kyle. I haven't seen him in so long. Is he doing okay? He probably hates me, she wondered. Kyle's doing well. He's working hard and is well liked by his boss, I informed her. She responded with a slight tearful voice, that's good to hear. The strong-willed Emily, once the belle of the class and a CEO's daughter, was no longer there. After that, I started visiting Emily occasionally. I was somehow worried about her. Then one day, she shared some news with me. My dad called me recently. I had been ignoring him, but I decided to face him and answer the call. He was worried about me. Even in my state, I couldn't help but cry. He said I could come back home if things got tough, but I refused, wanting to live on my own. She also mentioned our reunion. Her father-in-law apparently only said I see. There was no sign of anger in his voice. Rather, it seemed he sounded relieved. Hearing that their relationship was on the mend, I felt relieved too. After a while, Emily and I talked about starting over from square one. Of course, just as friends for now. I told Kyle about this. Then my son said, "All right, I'm with you too. I want to support her again." Emily quietly murmured, "I owe you an apology. I'm truly sorry. At that time, I thought it was the best thing to do for our child, but I realize now that I was wrong." Tears filled her eyes as she expressed her remorse, and I didn't know what to say. I understood where my ex-wife was coming from, trying to prevent our child from facing hardships in the future. I gently embraced her. After half a month passed and my business trip ended, I returned home. I wondered why I had wanted to see her, why I had searched for her. I wanted to hear Emily's voice, to talk to her like we used to. Sure, there was a time when I was angry and resented her. But now, those feelings had completely vanished. The past is in the past, and she had suffered enough. Maybe our reunion was fated. A week later, I went back to the rural town where Emily was. I had something I needed to say to her. I need you. I wanted to convey just that. And on my next day off, I planned to bring Kyle to meet her in that rural town, the three of us together.